In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the use of conditional formatting. So what is conditional formatting? If you hold your cursor on the Home Ribbon Styles group right on conditional formatting, its tooltip gives a pretty good description. Easily spot trends and patterns in your data using bars, colors, and icons to visually highlight important values. In this case, I have a table. It's insurance data. We have claims, the date the claim was created, the agent, the type, the description, whether it's closed or open, and then the date it was resolved. And then we take the resolved date minus the created date to say how long did it take for us to fix that. So our first example of conditional formatting is maybe I just want to highlight all of our open statuses. So obviously I could run to the word open and just type, put in a color right there, and then click on another one and put in a color. The problem is if it goes from open to closed, that color is still there. So that's not conditional formatting. That is literally just formatting the cell. So I'm going to Control Z out of all that. Let's do the same thing with conditional formatting. The first thing we need to do is select the column where we want that format to reside. So I'm selecting this column. I go to conditional formatting and we will go through all of these, but right now we're going to highlight the cell rule. And basically if that cell equals open, we're going to color it. Or we could use text that contains. In this case, equal to works just fine because it's a single word, open. And what color do we want those opens to go? There's already some predefined formats, light red fill with dark red text, yellow fill, green fill, light red fill, red text, red border, and then you can custom format. You can make up your own. I tend to go with all the predefined ones. If you click a custom format, you can choose what color do you want the fill, do you want a border around the cell, do you want a font to be bold, change the number formatting, whatever. Again, I tend to go with the predefined ones. Light red is good, I hit OK. And so now you can see quickly and easily all of our open cases. If we finally resolve one and I type the word close and hit enter, notice it automatically goes from red back to the banded color. Let's take a look at a few more examples. Conditional formatting highlights cell rules. I want to highlight in this column anything that is greater than our 30, for instance. It's sitting up there. So I will select that column, conditional formatting, greater than. So what does it need to be greater than? And we'll make a red. I'll say the 30. I'll click on that cell. Notice it's absolute, which would be perfect. And now we hit OK. We'll stick with the light red fill. And so now we can scroll through our data and see all of those things that are greater than 30. I am going to get rid of that rule so I can demonstrate some others. To get rid of or edit a rule, you click here and you go to Manage Rules. And right here you'll see all of the rules in this table. You could also do this worksheet or just this selection. So if I do that selection, then you can see this one. In this case, I'm going to delete the rule, hit OK. And so now that's gone, because the other thing I want to point out is the top and bottom rules. I can say, show me the top 10 items, top 10%, bottom 10, all of those that are above average or below average. The only thing that's a little tricky here is you see that number 10 and get fixated on it. You can click on that and then it's going to open up this dialog box where you can say, no, I just need to see the top 5 or the top 20. And one more time, pre-formatted. This time I'll go green, we'll hit OK. And so now we're seeing the largest 5. And of course, if you remember from my previous video on sorting, we can sort by color. In fact, I can probably do it right here, sort by color. I can bring those to the top, or I could filter on color. And so now I'm seeing all of those that are in our top 5. Now you're like, well, wait a minute, that's more than 5. Well, it's because we got ties. And so all of the ties also show up in that example. I'll clear that filter. Another useful conditional formatting rule is removing, or not removing, but highlighting duplicate values. If you remember under table, we have remove duplicates, but it doesn't necessarily show you where they're at. So if I have duplicate claim numbers, that could be a problem. So if I select through, I should do Control Shift down arrow, select through that data, scroll back up, under the home ribbon, conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, duplicate values. It's going to ask you what color do you want to make it. You hit OK. And so theoretically, maybe this is a problem that we have duplicate claims in our data. Now I can go to table design and remove duplicates. We also have the ability to conditional format on dates, a little bit similar to when we're filtering data. I can conditional format, highlight cell rules, a date occurring. And then we have things as of yesterday, today, tomorrow, in the last 7 days, last week, this month, next month. Obviously, you can also just say, hey, I want to anything greater than or less than, and then put in a date in that field. Most of this is fairly self-explanatory. The highlight cell rules and the top and bottom rules. Again, don't forget the 10 is just an example. When you click on it, you can then change that number to whatever you want. Let's talk about data bars. Before I do, I am going to select this range, Control-Shift down arrow, go to Manage Rules, and I'm going to do it for my current selection and delete this rule so we don't have multiple rules working on the same range. So I'll hit OK. What are data bars? It basically puts in a little bar graph that represents the size of the value in the cell. So you have gradient fill and solid fill, and then basically the colors that you want. So just to make it stand out a little bit, I'll use orange gradient fill. And so now you can see the size of the bar a little bit. If you go to Manage Rules on that data bar and hit Edit Rule, there is things that you can mess around with down here. So for instance, right here, bar direction, I can change it. So right now it's left to right. I can make it right to left, I think. Let me hit OK. OK, and so now the bars are going the other direction. You can also change the size of the bars. So I'm going to go in here and edit that again. That's right here. So if the maximum value seems, let's say 36 is our largest, I can say, hey, make it a particular number, and I will make it 40. And so now that bar will shrink up just a little bit when I hit OK. And so it doesn't quite go to the edge of the cell. Anyway, you'll have to go in there and mess around a little bit to see what are the things that you can change. You can change the colors of your gradients, negative value, and the axis. So just recognize that you can change some of the things on the data bars. Another kind of interesting one is these icon sets. So you can choose to have arrows, like this is getting good, this is even, and then this is getting bad. And so if you look, it's not smart enough to know that actually the bigger number is bad and a lower number is good. But again, going back into managing our rules on that icon set, we can edit it. And right down here it's saying, hey, when the value is greater than 67%, it's going to do a green arrow. When it's less than 67 and greater than 33, so kind of in the middle, we'll do that. And when it's less than 33, we'll do a down arrow. So you can change these numbers right here so that it reverses the order. In fact, I think I can do it right there. There we go. So I just reversed the icon order, but you could also make this 70% and 25, or 75 and 25, or whatever values you need in that case. So we'll hit apply, and now we can see that, oh yeah, this one's not good, these are pretty good, and this is kind of in the middle. I have seen a lot of Excel data where people will use what we call stoplight charts. And so green means we're doing good, yellow is caution, and then red means, oh, we got an issue. And the same idea is you can change the values that determine red, green, and yellow by going in and managing or editing that rule. The last thing I'll show you on conditional formatting is how you can create your own rule based on a formula. Before I do that, I'm going to clean out all of the rules I have in this table. So under conditional formatting, clear rules, I could go into manage rules and just go delete, delete, delete on each one of these. Or back here, I had clear rules, and then it says from selected cells, entire sheet, or this table. Let's go ahead and clear all the rules from this table. So here's my scenario. I want to highlight in red the claims where the duration is greater than that value. So normally I could have, in fact we had done this already. I selected over here, highlight cell rules where the value is greater than 30, and then we made these red. In this case, I want the claim number to be red when the value way over here is greater than that 30. So Shift Control down arrow, let's select that column, run back up. conditional formatting, and we're going to create a new rule. So right here, or highlight cell rules, more rules. So we are going to do it based on a formula to determine which cells to format. And here's the formula. We type the word equal, and we want K7 to be greater than that cell. Now notice it automatically, I didn't do this, Excel automatically absoluted your cell references whether you want to or not. And in fact, this gets tricky. I do not want this to be absolute, because what that's doing is we're taking a look at cell B7 right here, and this formula is relative to that. And so in other words, when I get to B8, it's still looking at K7. When I'm looking at B9, it's still looking at K7. So every cell is looking at K7. Let me demonstrate that. Let's go ahead and set the format. Now, when we're creating our own rule, it doesn't come up with a predefined format, so I had to click Format. We are just going to make it an easy one. We'll just fill with this red and hit OK. So now, is K7 greater than C4? We'll hit OK. Every cell went red, and that's because each one of these cells is basically looking at K7, asking if it's greater than 30. If this happens to be 28, well, now every cell went not red because it's always looking at K7. So in this example, let's go manage that rule. Manage that rule, we'll edit it. We do not want K7 to be absolute in this case. We want that to be relative to each of these cells that we have selected. So now when I hit OK and OK, that guy's red, and if I scroll down through others, oh, this guy's red, and should he be? Yeah, he's at 37. And so, oh, there's only 2 red ones. Just to double check, let's sort on largest to smallest here. Z to, whoop, what am I doing? Data, Z to A. So yeah, we have 2 that are greater than 30, and those claim numbers are red. Let's clear that rule and do another example from this table where 2 things need to be true, and we'll talk about this statement later in another week, but same idea. I'm going to shift control down arrow, and basically what I'm looking for is maybe we have natural disasters. Where do I see that? Right here. So the description is a natural disaster and open. I want to highlight claim numbers that are open natural disasters. So I'm going to go conditional formatting. We're going to set up a new rule, and we're going to use a formula. And you haven't seen this before, but it's an AND statement that basically says 2 things have to be true in order for us to color this cell. And what are those 2 things? Well, I want this description to equal, quote, natural disaster, and hopefully I'm spelling this right, quote. That's one thing that has to be true. The second one is the status. This cell has to equal, quote, open, quote. Close that up. Those are my 2 conditions, and it's in this thing called an AND function. Now, based on what we talked about a minute ago, notice Excel always absolutes these things, and in this case, I don't want that. I need H7 to be relative to cell B7, so that when I go to B8, we're going to be looking at H8. When I go to B9, we're looking at H9. And the same thing with I7. I want those to be relative. And then the format, let's just do something different. We'll do a dark blue, and we'll make the font white. And we'll hit OK. So that's what it should do, and we'll hit OK. There we go. So this is blue and white based off natural disaster open. So let me go ahead and sort this by or filter on color, and we'll choose that. So each one of these is natural disaster open. Let's take a look one more time at that rule, make sure we understand. Basically, this needs to be relative because we're selecting data in column B, and yet we're looking at things in H and I. Just to make your brain hurt, let's do one more example. I'm going to clear my rules again on this table, and we'll clear our filter. What if I want to highlight the entire row when it's an open natural disaster rather than a single cell? Well, I would select Shift Control down arrow the entire row. We're going to apply a conditional format to the entire row, and we're going to do that exact same rule, except we're going to go equal and parenthesis. We want the description to equal quote natural disaster, quote, comma, and the other piece in the and statement would be that this cell equals, quote, open. Now, here's the deal. Obviously, I want row 7 to be relative, so that when we go to row 8, I'm looking at H8. When I go to row 9, I'm looking at H9. So I don't want the dollar sign there, and the same thing with the status. I don't want the dollar sign there. In this example, because not only are we looking at B8, but we're trying to color C8, D8, E8, F8, I want the H to be absolute, and I want the I to be absolute. I don't need this to be a relative reference as we go across, because the idea is we're trying to color the entire row. So in this case, I'm going to format. Let's go to the font, and we'll just make the font red across that entire row when we run into a natural disaster that's open. So I hit OK. I hit OK, cross our fingers. As we scroll down, oh yay. So I am seeing red font when we have an open natural disaster in our data. So I have another video that somebody else put out that's really good on this. If I go to the home, we get the home ribbon. So anyway, she talks about this in a little more detail if you want to watch her video and get another explanation of how to do that. I think we've covered this topic in pretty good detail. It's not hard to do these things. The one thing I would caution or recommend is a lot of times you'll do a conditional format and then screw it up. I've done this 100 times where I click on a single cell, create my conditional formatting rule, and when I'm all done, I'm like, oh man, I forgot to select the whole range before I created that rule, right? So you can end up with several rules that are useless or that you're not really using. I always encourage my students to go in and manage rules and clean them up. So if you have rules that are a mistake, run in here and delete the rules so that you don't have multiple rules over the same range. So that is it. Conditional formatting in a nutshell.